Good morning and welcome to the OEC COVID-19 update. This morning, we will be reviewing a recent policy update supporting programs transitioning to mask wearing for children. My name is Rachel Leventhal-Weiner. I'm the Office of Early Childhood's Chief Research and Planning Officer, and I'll be helping to facilitate this morning's conversation. We're joined by Commissioner Beth Bai and Dr. Lynn Sosa, and several providers who are going to be speaking about their experiences this morning. At any point during our conversation this morning, we hope to field answers to your questions, and you can send questions to us throughout the conversation using the questions pane in the GoToWebinar tool. We are planning to offer Spanish interpretation of this morning's event. Our interpreter is delayed this morning in joining our event. If you requested Spanish interpretation, you should have received a calendar invitation with an invite to a Microsoft Teams meeting. And if you did not receive that, please send us a message using the chat feature or using the questions feature, and we will do our best to accommodate you. Again, we thank you for your patience this morning in our slight delay beginning. And I would like to begin this morning by introducing our Commissioner, Beth Bai, who will address and introduce the conversation. Commissioner.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well and are healthy on this day. I want to just make sure, Rachel, that everyone can hear me.
We can hear you.
Great.
And see you.
I'm speaking to you again during the pandemic. I have a staff member, Lorna, who likes to remind me as things get stressful and challenging that we're in this moment because of a pandemic. It's not anyone's fault. We're in a pandemic and we're all doing our best to adapt. And I would say that the early childhood community has adapted through really difficult times and challenging times, both working with children and families, and challenging times for your businesses as well. And we know it's challenging. We're doing our best to support you. So this morning's really set up to support you and to help give you some guidance from people in the field who've been implementing mask guidance at their programs, and to answer your questions. I wanted to start with, how do you get to a decision to require mask wearing among 3- and 4-year-olds in Connecticut? And how it starts is that the State Department of Ed and the Office of Early Childhood approached the Reopen Committee about mask guidance. And we've had several conversations with that Reopen Committee that has members who are both at the Department of Public Health, who work for OSHA, professors from Yale, and about 5 or 6 commissioners from other agencies that are dealing with some of these same questions and challenges. And we spoke with them, and after a long discussion, based on some current research around the ability for asymptomatic young children to spread the disease, the decision was made to require masks. So then Miguel Cardona, the Commissioner of Education, and I also consulted with Deidre Gifford, who is the Commissioner of Public Health. And we also worked with the Office of the Governor to get guidance and an executive order that came out on September 4th to give the OEC the ability to implement the recommendations of the Reopen Committee and the Department of Public Health. The change came because we specifically had an exemption for mask wearing for child care providers and camps. After the research and after the CDC and the Academy of Pediatrics changed their guidance and recommended mask wearing for 2- to 5-year-olds. We did not implement the 2-year-old because of the way both public school, preschool, and childcare work. You have infant toddler rooms and you have preschool rooms. And so this is, we started at the age of 3 with our guidance. And certainly I know there are programs with 2-year-olds that are implementing this. I visited one, but we are not requiring that. We recommend that, when children are 2, you start to practice mask wearing with them. This is really around keeping our workforce safe, keeping families safe, and keeping children safe. We know that early childhood providers have been following our safety protocols really successfully. And we have not had that many cases for the number of programs that are open, but we have had some cases. And we don't know about asymptomatic spread and if childcare has contributed to that. So as schools reopened with 3 and 4-year-olds, and OEC and SDE are working together, this is a policy we landed on. We didn't do it easily, and it took at least 3 weeks for us to go through and develop guidance to make sure we allowed programs to transition children. So many of you have, well, you've all received memo 29, and basically the change is effective September 21st when this policy goes into effect. I'm going to just walk through some of the parts of this policy, not intended to be the whole thing. But first of all, we asked the programs to develop a written policy for mask wearing and to provide a policy to staff and families. We urge you to look at the CDC and American Academy of Pediatrics, and there's also a lot of guidance from CDC. We have a number of resources on our website to help you, and we are working on guidance, sort of a bulleted list of things to consider. I know many of you are already working on that. And we also suggest that this policy has to address how do you address non-compliance with children, gentle reminders, and the least restrictive way possible. And we also wanted to be clear in the policy that children shall not be excluded from programs or isolated from their peers due to the child's non-compliance. So we thought that was important. If a child is not complying with mask wearing, it doesn't mean the child can't come to the program, and programs will continue to work with that child. And that's what our regulators will be looking for when they come in. You'll have to talk about how you're working with the child toward mask wearing. I say this also knowing, and you're going to hear from several providers today, that the transition to this policy has gone very well at programs that have done it, and you'll hear more from some of those. But there are exemptions for children with a documented disability or special education need, or children who wearing a face mask is contrary to their needs. So we can have exceptions. Also, children in special education and related services where lip reading is required can remove the mask intermittently. Children don't need to wear a mask while eating, sleeping, or resting, but we do say that the distance between children has to be maximized, maintaining 6 feet wherever that's possible. We also give a period of 2 months during which children can adapt to this new policy, and you can work toward that. I spoke with a director yesterday who has a plan that in the first week it's going to be an hour and a half or 2 hours a day, the next week 3 hours, to give time for everybody to get used to it. And mask breaks may be planned throughout the day, and that masks may be removed for outdoor activities. We do know that being outside is one of the best things to slow the spread of the virus. And so when kids are outside, that's one of the best places to be. And I did go by a preschool on my bike, and I saw that they'd set up like 5 different spaces outside in little corrals for kids so that they could spend most of their day outside. Another really good thing to think about if you're able to do that. I know not everybody can. And then that camps and childcare programs can develop a phase-in plan up to October 9th, and I'm sorry, October 19th. And the phase-in plan also includes sort of communicating with families, as well as communicating with children and working with your staff on strategies that you'll hear some of those today. So I just wanted to go over the key parts of that. We don't pretend that this isn't a challenge, and we know we're asking you to step up again. We know there's some parents who are very upset about this, and so part of this is a parent education exercise. But I will say, I really believe that all parents care about their care providers, and that as we can be clear about the CDC and American Academy of Pediatrics, and we talk about how important it is to keep our teachers safe, that parents will come along. Today, we brought together 3 providers because we know, we found this with the health and safety guidance, that you all learn best from each other. And people are doing this today. So it's not something coming from the moon. There are many programs implementing this right now. And so how are they doing that? And how is it working with children with disabilities? And how are they transitioning to that policy? And what's it like in public schools? What's it like in family childcare? And how are people making that work? So now that I've reviewed Memo 29, I'm going to ask, because this is really guided by public health. I'm a toddler teacher. I'm a preschool director. I'm a commissioner. I'm not a public health expert. I rely on public health experts, and I cannot thank Dr. Lynn Sosa enough, who has been supporting the Office of Early Childhood. Hi, Lynn. I'm so thankful that you're here today. And if you just want to follow up with some of the public health reasons for this, and thank you for being available for our team and for questions as well. So Dr. Sosa, take it away.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to keep my remarks brief. I think as we have gone through I guess we're in our 7th month of this pandemic, we are continuing to learn more about the importance of masks and how really they are critical in limiting transmission of COVID-19. So, and this is really at all levels. So, and if you follow the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, so that's CDC scientific publication and the one that is being used to primarily share public health findings related to COVID-19. And so earlier in the summer, there was an article about 2 hairdressers in another state who had worked while symptomatic, but none of their clients were infected. And they looked at, I think, almost 200 people. And they attributed much of that to the fact that they were wearing masks and everybody else was wearing masks. And so this leads up to the most recent MMWR related to daycare cases in Utah, and really demonstrating that even young children can transmit COVID-19 to adults. And so this is really important, I think, in emphasizing where we can have people wear masks. So as the commissioner said, certainly very young children can't wear masks, but if it is really important to be able to have a little bit older children wear masks. And as she said, and I think the experience that I've heard from others as well, is that we definitely can have children wear masks. They just need to be taught and have it modeled for them. And so far, I will say, so I have 3 children, and so far they're doing actually really well with masks. I was a little bit worried, but they've actually taken it on pretty easily. They're like, yep, okay, sure, I can wear a mask. So I think it's really important, and ultimately I think will be helpful in limiting transmission, as the commissioner said, to daycare providers, but also among the children themselves. So I look forward to hearing people's experiences with this so far.
Thank you, Dr. Sosa. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, like, things change. Our understanding has changed. We had the exemption when we didn't understand that children could indeed be asymptomatic spreaders. But the study in Utah was really interesting. That did show it, they can pass it. And though kids may not show the symptoms and may present as healthy, it's the adults that get sick. And what we're doing here is trying to protect our teachers, our program directors, the families of the young children, and folks with comorbidities. So I really appreciate you mentioning, things change. It's a pandemic and our understanding's changing. This is all new. And I think we all need to partner to try to keep our staff and our community safe. So thank you so much. We're going to hear, as Dr. Sosa said, I think the adults are sometimes more reactive to this issue than the children turn out to be. Just the idea of it. And I will admit that at first, several months ago, as we understood less about masks, it was hard for me to conceptualize this requirement. But as time has gone on and we've learned more, it's incumbent upon us at OEC, at SDE, and in other agencies to try to stop the community spread. And for those of you that listened to the governor's press conference yesterday, things are ticking up a little bit in Connecticut. We're hovering around 1.6%. We were under 1% for a good 6 or 7 weeks in Connecticut. So 1.6% means that there's more in the community, and so this becomes even more important. So when people say, how can you change this? We've been going since March and things are going great. We have been going since March, and a lot of the items that we have been doing, like cohorting, cleaning, have teachers wearing masks, have helped. But we now know there's more we can do, and that's why we're making this change. So I'm going to turn it over to Deb Fliss, who's going to introduce you to some providers, and hopefully you'll get some tips and help in understanding how do you make this happen in reality. It's one thing for me to sit here and talk about it, but you've got to make it work. So Deb, good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
And I see you're at the OEC, and I'll turn it over to you.
Here I am coming to you live from the OEC. Today we're pleased to bring you 3 providers who will talk about their change process and the way that they have adjusted their practices to include in their system of protections mask wearing for young children. They'll tell you what type of program they operate and how they've made efforts to help children, staff, and families adjust to the requirement. Following the providers, we will have some time for Q&A. There is a questions panel in the GoToWebinar operating system where you can type your questions. If your question is for someone specific, it would be helpful if you would indicate that. First, we'll hear from the providers. So let's begin first with Irene Garneau, who is the Department Supervisor for Early Childhood Education at West Hartford Public Schools. Good morning, Irene.
Good morning. How are you? Good morning, everybody. As Deb said, I'm the Department Supervisor for Early Childhood for West Hartford Public Schools. We have 4 school readiness classrooms and 3 Smart Start classrooms in town. And we initially, were ready to follow the initial guidance from OEC with no masks, which was a little different in the public schools because everyone else was going to be wearing masks. And our assistant superintendent was in conversation with the Department of Public Health throughout the summer, and we sort of saw the writing on the wall that the masks were probably coming for early childhood as well. So we made a decision that we were just going to start the year that way. And we had already, of course, communicated to parents that they didn't have to wear a mask. So then I had to re-communicate with parents, let them know that we were going to be wearing masks in pre-K. So we addressed that by having a family meeting, a virtual parent meeting, and talk to families about, what was going to happen. And what really helped me was over the summer, while I kind of knew this was coming, I was starting to feel a little anxious about it. I kind of err on the side of developmentally appropriate, which I'm sure most of you do as well. And I couldn't quite wrap my head around having 3- and 4-year-olds wear masks. And I happened to meet a preschool teacher over the summer who was working in Massachusetts, where masks were required in the pre-K classrooms. And she said, "Oh, the children are doing great. The children are fine. The children are doing better than the teachers." And it just reduced my anxiety so much. I said, "Oh, you're in the trenches. You're doing this every day, and it's working." And my anxiety just sort of left, and it really helped me reframe how I was approaching the conversation with families and how I was approaching the conversation with my staff. So that was great. The parents in that meeting were surprisingly were relieved than upset. There was 1 or 2 that were a little bit anxious and worried, they might have an energetic, 3-year-old that might not want to keep their mask on. And she was worried, she said, "I have this vision that you're going to be like holding down my child and forcing them to wear a mask." And I said, "Oh my goodness, absolutely not." And the really nice thing about the OEC guidance is it gives us that space to help children learn, right, how to wear a mask and work on compliance. And right now we're at about 95% of children, about 95% of the time, are wearing their masks all the times that they're supposed to, with, of course, mask breaks during the day. And as Beth said, no masks during snack or lunch or rest time. And outside they have chances to take their masks off as well. And we do spend a lot of our day outside. The parents have been great. They bring in, they've all come with masks. The district bought literally tens of thousands of masks, and they're all sitting in boxes because the families have all brought in masks. They bring in extra masks as backups, and they've been great. And I did reassure them, though, those that were a little worried, that we're going to create a space of grace and forgiveness because we're all learning. Children are going to make mistakes. Adults are going to make mistakes, and that's okay because we're all adjusting to this new normal. So when I asked my teachers, I said, I'm going to be speaking at this webinar, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear you're in it all day, every day. And they resoundingly said, children have been doing extremely well. In fact, sometimes during mask breaks, they don't even want to take their masks off. They really like them. Sometimes they're pretty fun, and they have a cute little bear face or Spider-Man. So they're really actually doing great. In fact, so when I talk about that new normal, an example is one of our teachers did a self-portrait activity at the beginning of the year, the first week of school, and children asked for masks to be part of their self-portraits. So they're really seeing themselves wearing masks every day, which is great. We also had, talk about family support, we had a parent who was a sewer, so little teeny tiny masks for the baby dolls. So when you go into dramatic play, you'll see little tiny masks on the baby dolls, and that was given to us by a parent, which was really great. So the challenges that I also asked teachers to identify some challenges that they're having. And one of them is making sure that masks are a good fit so that they actually fit on a child's face. Sometimes they're a little too big and they might fall off. Sometimes they're a little too small and they might pop off their ears. So just making sure that masks are a good fit and work with families on finding what's right for their child. And then also having children learning to be able to use the masks independently. And that's something that they're working on, and helping children develop those skills of being able to kind of put it on appropriately and making sure it's over their nose. And they need gentle reminders during the day, and that's okay. And they're actually reminding each other, which is also kind of cool. They're giving each other little reminders about, like, oh, don't forget, put your mask on. And then then the child gets his mask and he comes back and engages in some play. So what I initially thought might be a really big deal, and I was worried about it, has turned out to be not a big deal at all. The children are doing wonderfully. The parents have been very supportive. And I think it's also nice for parents because it's a consistent message. I had gotten some initial feedback early when we weren't going to wear masks from parents saying, well, I'm telling them when they go out into the world, they have to wear a mask to stay safe. And now you're telling them they don't when they come to school. So it really is a more consistent message that families are giving their child at home, and then that we're also following up with at school. So it's been pretty easy and good for families.
Irene, thanks so much. I really appreciate how you talk about this in terms of being a developmental transition, as so many other things that we do in early childhood are developmental transitions, and we need to learn and practice and make mistakes and have trial and error and give all of our staff and kids that space to figure it out.
I often equate it when I talk to families like toilet training or potty training. There's going to be accidents, right? And everyone's going to get there in their own time.
Things will happen and we'll work through it. Yeah. And that consistent message, I think, is helpful too. We know that that's always true for kids, that they need to hear a message that makes sense consistently for them, and that helps them move their behavior and their thinking. Appreciate that too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Anne Becchia. Anne is the owner and director of the Madison School for Young Children. Anne, we're so glad you're here with us today, and we look forward to what you have to share.
Morning. Hello, everybody. I think I could ditto everything that Irene said. We've had a nearly identical experience here at Madison School for Young Children. I'm a private provider in the Madison-Guilford area. We were closed and reopened in June. When we were preparing for our opening in June, we hadn't been thinking about masks for young children because at that time, really, there wasn't much chatter about children who could potentially spread COVID who were asymptomatic. And so we were concentrating more on all of our other safety protocol, which we put into place when we started in June. And we started with very, very low enrollment in June. Currently we have 3 preschool classes open with the capacity of 16 in each. But during the summer, there was only 2 classes open, and each would have anywhere from 5 to 8, maybe 10 kids a day. So we had plenty of time to work out all of our other safety protocol through the summer. And over the summer, that's when we started to hear more from the Academy of Pediatrics, local health, and just about the potential spread with kiddos. And so we started to talk about it more as a staff. Again, some hesitation about, is it developmentally appropriate for 3- and 4-year-olds to be wearing masks? But the more we thought about it, we saw the kids in our program in public with their families wearing masks. They were doing this in life outside of here, and it made sense to be consistent here as well. And then as we were working in the classrooms with the kids, we noticed even with those small numbers of children, there were certain times during the day that it was impossible to socially distance ourselves from the kiddos or for them to keep distance from each other. And we all know those times when we need to comfort children, when we're helping them take on or off wet clothing. We wear indoor shoes and outdoor shoes here, so many of the children still need help getting shoes on and off. And all of that brings us in very close proximity with the children. And as some of my staff were getting ready to come back to work in the fall, I did have a staff member whose doctor was pretty concerned about her coming back because of an underlying health condition. And the doctor had indicated that she would feel so much safer if the children in her class were wearing masks. And this teacher asked me, what my thoughts were on that. And she hadn't been working for the summer, so my summer team had really been mulling all of this over. And I think that was it. That was the final piece for me, that we really just want to keep everybody safe. And it's so much our culture here at Madison School for Young Children to talk about being kind to each other, being compassionate, helping each other out. And this just falls right into that naturally. We're wearing masks, not because we're afraid, but because we care about each other and because we just want to make sure everybody's safe. And so that was sort of our natural way into it in talking to parents and kids about it. Parents really were all on board. I had more parents requesting or asking if we would wear masks. I actually didn't hear anybody have a concern about or voicing a concern during the summer that they didn't want children wearing masks. And then I just put it out. Really, I didn't think about it personally as a big deal, just as a new policy we were putting into place here. And I did put that out to parents along with our reasoning of why we would do it, how we would present it to the kids, making it part of our social emotional curriculum, talking about it as an act of kindness. And it's really gone off without a hitch. Sure, there's kinks to work out. We've learned, we've figured out when are the best time for mask breaks. We actually don't have everybody do a mask break all at once because kids have individual needs. There's certain times it doesn't make sense. We do a class mask break, for example, when our 3-year-olds are going to the toilet. it's a disaster if they're wearing, or they're all wearing their mask, or at least right now. So they do take masks off, but otherwise it's more individualized. The children do bring their own masks in. We keep extras in the cubby. We have clotheslines hanging in the classrooms, and we practiced using clothespins. It took about a week. Everybody learns how to use a clothespin now and hang their masks up. And we've practiced how to take care of our masks, how to put them on. At the peace table in one of the classrooms, there's a mirror so the kids can go, and it is just a little center for 1 or 2 children where they could practice putting their mask on appropriately and adjusting it and looking in the mirror. And it's just, that's a fun activity for them. And honestly, masks are just not even a big thing anymore. It's sort of an afterthought. Just like I change my shoes when I come in, I take off my wet clothes if they're wet, and I wear a mask. And it's been very, very successful.
Anne, thank you so much. I think you've highlighted for us the inclusion of mask wearing as part of your whole system of things that you're doing to keep your staff and your children and your family safe. But I also really appreciate how you're talking about the balance between finding a way to help incorporate it into the routines, but also recognizing the challenges, and that you're continuing to work this through, that it didn't all happen with the turn of a switch to make everybody comfortable and everybody incorporate the routine, but that you're really supporting and practicing and highlighting some of the social emotional features and discussions, I think, is also important. I put in the chat the link to the OEC page on social emotional support. Some of our pyramid resources are included there, as are some social stories around mask wearing that programs may find helpful. So thanks so much, Anne, for your contributions. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Our next and final panelist is Rhonda Knowles. Rhonda is a home-based early educator, and she's going to tell us how she implemented mask wearing in her family childcare home. Good morning, Rhonda.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Rhonda Knowles, and as was mentioned, I'm a home-based early educator, and I've been in the profession for 31 years. I began implementing mask wearing when I started to listen to the healthcare providers, the experts. We've been living in a bubble, I would call it, in my program since March, because everybody was home. So you didn't really have to worry about where so much you went, where the children went, because you were confined into your quarters. As the economy started to open up in Connecticut and you had more freedoms, I started to realize now there's time for more exposure to what's going on out there. It started with myself and my husband. We are in business together. We practiced wearing masks, which type fit well, which type didn't work. Some bent your ears back. You started to feel pain in them. It would cut. And I said, let me experiment on us before we experiment on the children. By May, I had decided that because I have all essential workers in my program, that this is a good practice and I wouldn't receive any, kind of resentment or any negativity from them because they are aware that they wear masks in the profession that they're in. So in May, we started to require that the parents bring us at least 2 masks. It was the 100% cotton ones that had a pliable band for the ears that you could kind of put it in a knot so that you could adjust it on the child's face. Everyone adapted to it with no problem. I had no issues with the parents, and I started on my 5, 6, and 7-year-olds that were with me at the time. When they saw the older children wearing them, my 3s and 4s wanted to model the behavior of the older children. So it wasn't an issue at all. The issue that I found was, how long should they wear the mask? What's an appropriate amount of time to keep it on? And since I initiated this in May, I'm part of the food program. So I decided the best practice was we serve a breakfast in the morning, a AM snack, a lunch, and a PM snack. It was no problems. They would come in the morning, we'd take their temperature, they'd change their shoes for street shoes and put on their slippers. Everyone would go and pick up their mask. They would go into the bathroom and wash their hands, and it wasn't a problem at all. But what I started to find is that the masks that I asked the parents to bring in, they were now too small. Their ears were starting to bend. I was hand washing them in the evening and hanging them on the line to dry because I was finding a little piece of carrot if you sneeze, a piece of spaghetti. So it was like, okay, we need more than just one or two. So because my parents financially are in a situation that wasn't an issue, I didn't have any problems. So then we were going to go outside. I'm fortunate enough to have a playground on the side of my home. So as some of the other speakers just mentioned, I have different stations. So you can go to a little water table and play over there. You can go and build with blocks in another corner. They can play basketball. They can ride their bikes. So we try to remain outside for at least anywhere from an hour to 90 minutes a day, weather permitting. So I think the problem and challenge that we might have for parents and families that are less fortunate than, say, mine, is the issue of purchasing the mask. I prefer that my children have a mask for each day of the week. I don't know if that's feasible for other home-based early educators. I don't know what their financial situations are, but it's going to be a challenge if they're all, say, white and we mass produce them. How will you distinguish one age group from the other, one child from the other? So I don't know if it's feasible to come up with colors for 3-year-olds only, colors for 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and I think the 5, 6, 7s and above, they're responsible enough because we're mixed age groups to be responsible for whatever mask that they have. The younger children, they have no issues because we're diverse in the age groups. Modeling is their whole thing. They want to model the behaviors of the older children. So I don't have an issue with my parents, but this is my individual story as being a home-based early educator. I initiated it in May, and they've had no problem complying with it. I don't have any issues with the children. But that doesn't necessarily mean that other home-based providers will not have a challenge. I think the 2 months is a good period of time. And if they need a little bit more, my suggestion is that they're given that, because I'm fortunate enough to have my husband working with me. Other providers are individuals and they don't have that luxury.
Rhonda, thank you so much. I think the challenges you identify are real, and I think it is also helpful to recognize that different programs in different settings will experience the challenges differently.
Exactly.
And part of the way that we have written the policy in allowing for the phase-in and for some appropriate exemptions and for a way for programs to write their own policy about this is to be sure that those things are individually responsive to every program and to the families that programs are serving. I just want to say one thing about the masks, and I think you point out a couple of important things about the need for additional masks, extra masks, how to tell them apart, et cetera. And I think each of you have probably worked out systems for how to make sure that children have their own masks on all the time. But at OEC, we are in fact trying to obtain a supply of children's masks and are hopeful to be able to have those for some distribution because we recognize that there's a challenge there. So as with the way that we have tried to fulfill other supply needs, we are working to try to address that need to help programs augment what they may already have in place.
Excellent.
All of the providers who shared their stories, they're so important and valuable to the over 500 folks who are on the line listening to how you have addressed the challenge and continue to address this process. I would like to move now back to Rachel, who is going to moderate our questions.
Hi, actually, I am going to hand it off to our colleague Nicole Cassette, who is going to moderate our questions for this morning. I just want to thank everyone for their the questions that we've received so far. We're going to do our best to answer as many as possible in the time we have remaining. We're lucky to still have with us Dr. Lynn Sosa, as well as our commissioner, to be able to offer support and answers as well of all of our generous providers. If you don't hear an answer to your question today, please know that we'll also take things back and create guidance as we have with every town hall that we'll post on our website. And I can link to where some of the other guidance is in the chat. So Nicole, I'm going to hand it off to you. And thank you so much. You can continue to share questions with us and we'll do our best to answer them.
Thank you, Rachel. So there were many really great questions that came through, one of which includes how do we handle children who have running noses or may have other issues along with that which aren't necessarily health related to COVID, but just average runny noses in the fall.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Nicole. I would say, the way you deal with running noses during the year, which is, I think obviously some of it will get on the masks. You want to have some backup masks when possible, and also encourage children to use tissues under their mask. But I'm going to ask Irene or Anne or Rhonda if you're running into this and how you're managing children with runny nose, or maybe, beginning of the year, kids tend to cry sometimes at drop off, and what happens as the masks get, runny nose or tears, etc. on them.
Well, I could
go ahead, Anne. Yeah,
I could answer. I mean, common sense, take the mask off. I mean, just take their mask off and wipe their nose. And we haven't had anybody, it's not that we haven't hit the season yet where it's that chronic super runny nose yet. We are all wearing smocks too, which help because that helps with getting, the children, if they're crying or something like that, wiping it on our own smock so it's not getting on the mask, and then changing our own smocks as well. But I think you have to just handle everything with a really good dose of common sense. It just doesn't make sense to leave a mask on a kid if they've got a bunch of stuff coming out their nose. Take it off and let it clear up a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Irene or Rhonda?
And my thought on that, this is Rhonda, would be this is why I recommended that you have 5 masks so that you're able to change out the mask, put it in a Ziploc bag, it's dirty, and know that it has to be laundered before the following morning comes. And again, you use the tissue. If you see it soaking through, again, to me, it would be common sense that you take it off and replace it with another one.
I would give the same guidance. Again, that big dose of common sense, and then making sure that you have some backup masks. So if families each send in 1 or 2 backup masks, but then also if the program can have additional masks, that would be helpful.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to have those of you practicing here to answer. This has been a really common question from parents and teachers. So, okay, Nicole, what else you got for us?
All right, next question would be that, is it safer to use disposable masks or cloth masks?
I'm going to ask Dr. Sosa if she's on to answer that as our public health expert.
It doesn't matter. So when we're talking about masks, we're really talking about face coverings. And there are a wide array of them. So I think it's whatever is most comfortable for the child is going to be the best mask for that child.
Dr. Sosa, while I have you on the screen here, there have been questions about gaiters and bandanas. Can you address that?
So I'm not the expert on that. I will tell you that my colleague who helped to develop the mask guidance for schools and has been the main person about that definitely had a lot of concerns about that one study that was done about the gaiters, because it really was not meant to really study the effectiveness of gaiters. So I think I'll be honest, I don't want to speak out of turn about exactly how we address that issue, but I think we have to, there's definitely some caveats to that. And I think what they've talked about in terms of gaiters is having them kind of double up and things like that. So my sense though is that that's an issue more for older children potentially, and less so for the age group that we're talking about here.
Okay, I really appreciate your help with that. And also, I'm going to ask my team to put in the chat our guidance. I know we've mailed it out, but we had our communications team put together a family-friendly flyer about mask wearing. And I know that in our guidance, we worked with DPH to come up with guidance around safe mask wearing. And I also know I'm frequently on the CDC site, they also have a really good guidance about how to wear masks for maximum safety. So thank you, Dr. Sosa. Next, Nicole.
All right, next question would be that there is a health concern for the staff and children when masks are covering faces and you're unable to clearly see if a child is choking or having trouble breathing. How do you address this?
Thank you for that question, and I'll do my best, and Dr. Sosa, you can weigh in too, but I think what's clear, and now that, I have my mask here because I just always have it with me. What we're learning from the mask wearing is, while certainly looking at the mouth is an important way that we communicate and we get cues, there are many, many cues we get from kids when they're in distress. And, it's just simple. You're simply observing the children, period. If children are choking, first of all, when you're choking, it's hard to make noise. That's when you're truly choking. But the idea is you're watching the kids, their whole expressions, their whole body movement. The mouth is one small part of our communication system. I don't know, Dr. Sosa, if you want to add on.
No, I think that's great. And I think the other point here is that there's certainly times when a mask shouldn't be worn, like when kids are eating. And that certainly would be the time you would probably be most concerned about choking or something like that. So again, that should lessen that concern, because the child isn't going to be wearing a mask while they're eating.
Yeah, good point. All right, next question, Nicole.
Next question, who has the right to determine the exemptions?
The exemptions were determined with the State Department of Education, working with the Reopen Committee and Department of Public Health. The whole policy was designed by that team. And obviously the Office of Early Childhood's input was, we know what young children are like, and we're going to use what we understand about child development, because we know there needs to be phase-in and time to adapt and that kind of thing. So we, under the executive order, have the legal authority to make these exemptions.
Thank you, Commissioner Bai. There's also several questions about parents who are non-compliant with the mask wearing. Can you expand upon that?
Yes, and we talked about this on the Early Childhood Alliance call as well, about parents who are non-compliant. I would say this is one of the top questions we're getting from providers. One of the first things we require in the policy is that programs develop a policy around mask wearing. And in that, that is a policy that has to be shared with staff and parents. And I think programs need to be really clear with parents what their program policy is about mask wearing. And additionally, I think I want to share that on the Connecticut Shares website, which is run by the Connecticut AEYC, it's ctshares.org. There's some guidance there around policy guidelines, and so you may find some help there with this. And we're also going to be sending out some sample guidance around mask wearing. And I will say what we realize, and certainly I've realized this as a program director, is that you all rely on each other. I know programs have been sharing their ideas and sharing policies with each other. We also want to be supportive as we can, but various directors groups are talking about this, and we know there wasn't a lot of time to develop them, but that's where you should let parents know that this is a requirement. It's a requirement of you as a early childhood program in Connecticut, whether you're licensed or exempt. And I think that the Connecticut Shares website you'll find helpful for this, but for many other things as well. So I hope that's helpful. And you may also consult with your attorney. If your program has an attorney, you may want to show them this policy, show them your what your policy is going to be for families, and discuss this with them. I don't know if anyone else from my team wants to weigh in on that answer. Okay, I guess not.
I think you're good, Beth. I just posted the CT Shares link in the chat box.
Awesome. So you'll find a link to CT Shares in the chat box. Okay, Nicole.
All right, Commissioner Bice, as a follow-up for the policy, would the OEC consider providing a template for providers in regards to the policy?
Yeah, I'm going to ask, I know Deb Johnson is on. Deb, do you want to talk about what you're developing with your team right now, so people have a sense of what that will look like when it's ready to go out? I don't know if Deb's muted. Okay, probably we've been having a few technical challenges on that. When Deb's ready, we'll have her pop in and answer that question, and I'll take the next one.
All right, next question would be, can staff wear their masks off, take their masks off when they're outside as well?
I'm not sure. I'm going to ask Mike Curley to weigh in on that. I haven't had that question. I'm sorry. I think a lot of it has to do with being able to be 6 feet away from folks, and I know that's hard for teachers. But I would ask Mike Curley if he can weigh in. Hopefully, he can speak. Okay. I just want to be sure I'm 100% accurate when I answer this question around staff because they are required to wear masks. Yep.
Hi, sorry, it's Irene Garneau. I could just answer as far as what we're doing here in the public schools. Okay. We've asked teachers to keep their masks on outside unless they're more than 6 feet away from children. But we know young children want to run up to their teachers and give them a hug or show them the scrape they just got on their knee, and they make it a little bit difficult to maintain that 6 feet distancing. So we do encourage teachers to keep their masks on when they're outside with children for those reasons. If they know they can walk to a corner and take their mask off for a minute or so and still be supervising, that's okay. But typically we ask them to keep it on.
Okay. Thank you, but I want to be sure that, thank you, Irene, that's really helpful. I want to be sure to give the appropriate policy. I know teachers are required to wear masks, but I'm going to ask if someone from our staff can put that answer in chat or help me out here, so I'm sure I give the proper guidance on this question.
Beth, it's Deb Bliss. Deb Johnson
okay.
is going to get on the line here in 1 second. So just give us a minute, maybe do one more question and then she'll be
Sure.
here. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Next question.
All right. Still regarding masks and children, are children who are in a preschool classroom who are under 3 years old, so 2.0 or below, are they required to wear masks as well?
Great question, and thank you those of you asking questions, because you're helping everyone get answered to their questions. We set it at age 3. So at age 3, children need to wear masks. So you could have a 2-year-old in a preschool room and they wouldn't be required to wear a mask. If I was running that preschool room, it would be one of the rules of my classroom, but under our guidance, it's not required. We use the age 3. So we know there's some children 2.9, 2 years, 10 months. We get that, and they're probably going to be transitioning anyway and getting used to it, but no, not required. Next question.
If children are wearing masks, do they still need to social distance?
Well, I mean, you want to social distance as much as you can, but we understand that young children are playing together, and that's not always possible. The masks aren't meant to say, oh, don't distance right now. So, we know that children are playing together, and we're relying on the cohort. I don't know if Dr. Sosa wants to weigh in at all on that, but we say, distance as much as possible, but we know that children are playing together as well. So if you usually have 6 people in dramatic play, you may say now we have 3 people in dramatic play, but I'll ask Dr. Sosa to weigh in as well. I don't know, maybe
right,
Dr. Sosa. Oh, okay. Listen, Nicole, I saw that Deb Johnson has been able to get on the line. I know we've been having a couple of audio problems, but Deb, there were 2 questions. One was about supporting policy development around mask wearing, and can you talk about the document that you're working on and getting ready to send out? And the second question was around adults wearing masks when they go outside, and when they're outside with the kids, do they keep their masks on?
I'll answer that one first.
Okay.
They can technically take it off when they're outside if they can be assured that they can maintain a distance of 6 feet from other staff and the children, which we all know is very difficult with children running up, and you want to be engaged in the children's play. So in many cases that would require that you keep a mask on. But if you're distanced appropriately, then you could take it off.
Thank you.
The other question in regards to a sample policy, yes, we are working very hard on developing a sample policy to share with programs very soon. We recognize how very difficult this may be, and there is a transition period. The policy that we will be putting out will contain the required components of the plan that's outlined in our memo, but it will also help guide programs in some of the other additional items they may wish to put in their policy. We recognize it's a transition period. Policies will be changing over time as they determine what works and what doesn't work.
Great. Thank you, Deb. I noticed that your simulcast says you are Deb Bliss, and mine says that I am Maggie Adair, but I am Beth By, and you are Deb Johnson. I know we are doing our best to work with the technology and bring you the answers. So thank you, Deb.
Okay.
Nicole, ready for the next question?
All right, next question. Can you explain exactly when masks are going to be required and when the policy will take effect?
Well, the policy takes effect on September want to get the exact September 21st. So that is Monday. And children, so the policy says that, and children are required to be wearing masks by October 19th. So September 21st is the date when the policies need to be in place, and you're working on it. But you have up until October 19th. So more than a month you've had to acclimate the children, for time to work with families, and to work on a phase-in plan.
Beth, if I can just jump in here
Sure.
and just
Sure.
add something. Right now, we are very much focused on educating programs, allowing them to educate their families about these new requirements, and offering support to programs, because we know that there will be a huge adjustment period. We will not be citing programs prior to October 19th. If they're not complying with this. Many programs will implement this or have been implementing this all along, but we will not be citing prior to October 19th. When we do visit programs, we're going to be verifying that programs have a written policy and looking at our staff following the policy. So we're really looking at the staff's compliance with this mask requirement. If there is a child who's not complying, the program is not going to be cited for that. We will be looking at how is the staff working with that child so that they do become more comfortable and adaptable to the mask requirement, gentle reminders and whatnot. So we will not be citing a program if there is a child who is just refusing to wear it. We're going to looking at the staff as far as their response to that and make sure they're following their policy.
Okay, and also just to follow up on the staff, when it comes to workplace rules, those are governed by the Department of Economic and Community Development. And so it's sort of like that's a workplace rule, and workplaces are requiring mask wearing. So I also suggest people can look at the DECD website for some more guidance if they'd like it about their own staff and mask wearing. Okay, next question.
There's one question, or several questions, about what to do with the masks when they're not being worn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, there are some great suggestions. I mean, why don't I just turn to our three folks who are implementing this, because we're not telling people how to do this, but what's happening at Charter Oak and the School for Young Children and our Rhonda's Family Child Care Program.
Yes, this is Rhonda. I do one of two things. Either I put them in a Ziploc bag or I hang them on a clothesline with a clothespin.
I couldn't get. Where's my, did you get my sweatshirt? This is all wet.
It's wet.
Yeah.
Beth, you're still on. In West Hartford, we're using actually like little paper lunch bags, because then they're pretty easy to, throw away, but are recyclable. And then I actually went to Home Depot and I got a pegboard and little, just like you would see maybe in your work room in your basement, and did, spaced out pegs, and then have a bottle of disinfectant spray. So if a class goes out and the kids want to hang up their masks, they can do that. They don't touch each other. They have air kind of flowing through it. And then the teacher, after each class leaves, they just spray it down to disinfect the space in between classes.
You can also have the kids, we are using clothespins, so you can have kids decorate their clothespins so they know which one's theirs. Their names are on them if they don't recognize their name already. And then when we go outside, we have, fencing, like, I don't know, not wood fencing, chain fencing, I don't know what you call it. But anyhow, you can, there's clothespins all over it now, and the kids know where to clip their masks outside as well, because they're not wearing them outside. And again, these guys aren't wearing masks all day long, because we schedule we have different sections outside. We're scheduled outside for 3 hours a day. and kids eat and sleep. So, if that's a concern, I think that's a concern sometimes for people who haven't done it yet or for parents. But once you get into the routine and you see how much kids are actually wearing it and with breaks, it's very, very manageable.
Agreed.
Rhonda, anything from your family childcare? Because we know we have a lot of family childcare programs listening about what's happening, where the kids putting the masks when they're not using them.
I do something similar with the clothespins, and I hang them up on the line and I spread them out so that they are not touching each other. Or if I'm kind of in a hurry and on the way to take somebody to be potty trained, I'll put it in a Ziploc bag and have a little white label sticker that says the child's name on the Ziploc bag.
Great, thank you so much. And I know I've also seen some recommendations around having like brown paper lunch bags where kids could put their masks in those. But you've heard the different things. I know my initial thought was I'd have the kids hang them up in their cubbies on the way outside, and then when they came in, just like their boots, and they put their mask on when they come in. So I hope that's helpful. Next question.
Commissioner, this is Rachel Leventhal-Weiner. So I think that we've reached the end of the questions that we have prepared for this morning. So I think we're ready to close our meeting this morning.
Okay, great. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I really want to thank Rhonda and Ann and Irene for their help today. I think childcare providers do learn the most from each other, giving each other tips and help. And we wanted that to be a big part of today. I'm also grateful to the OEC staff for setting this up, and Rachel for moderating, and Nicole as well, and Deb Fliss for moderating the providers. But most important, I want to thank you all. I know this isn't easy, what we're asking. We do believe it's doable, and we do believe it's in the interest of early childhood educators and their health, optimal health, and protecting them. So we are still open to questions. You can email us as well, and we will be developing frequently asked questions based on your questions here. And thank you so much on behalf of OEC and Governor Lamont for all you're doing for children and families at this incredibly challenging time for our state. I hope you all have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.